Hello and welcome to Politics War Room with James Carville, and I'm Al Hunt. This week we have a special guest, Michigan State Senator Mallory McMorrow, who has just announced she's running for the United States Senate next year. She's been a very favorite guest, and wow, what a candidate. Now remember, we love taking your questions, so write into politicswarroom@gmail.com or send a tweet to @Politicon for next week's show. We're going to get to as many as we can, but don't forget to tell us where you're from. You can also get text updates about what's next for Politicon and Politics War Room by signing up at politicon.com. So tell your friends about us and remind them to subscribe on Apple Podcasts, Spotify, or wherever you get your podcast. And please check out the links to our sponsors, Fay Nutrition, OutSchool Inc., and Fast Growing Trees in our show notes. We thank you for supporting our sponsors because it really does help make this podcast happen. Okay, James. Wow. What a week. It took 10 weeks, but the Democrats finally had a big day Tuesday. I was skeptical, and I only watched a little bit of Senator Cory Booker's 25-hour marathon speech on the Senate floor, laying out the evils of the Trump presidency. But it was compelling, and it energized Democrats. We are ready to fight, is the message from the New Jersey Democrat. Boy, was he good. And he beat Strom Thurmond's record. And on Wisconsin, state Supreme Court race, huge stakes, Trump's endorsement, Elon Musk pours in $25 million, deep involvement. There's worries about Democratic enthusiasm. But guess what? The Democrat, Susan Crawford, won. She not only won, she won in a landslide. She won by 10 points, and turnout was much bigger than that court race 2 years ago. That says something about energized Democrats in a swing state. At home, for Badger states, this 4-3 margin on the Supreme Court is important for abortion, for redistricting, for voting rights. But nationally, I think it sends a huge message that these swing state voters didn't vote for a government that goes after Social Security, cancer research, Gestapo tactics against law firms they don't like, or risk national security and pay no price. It was a stinging rebuttal to Elon Musk, who spent over spent about 25, I think we'll find eventually. And he showed up Sunday in Green Bay with a cheese hat. He looked about as natural, James, as you and I would in a tutu. I mean, he just looked like a total fool. And Green Bay, by the way, is a Republican-leaning Brown county. It went Democratic. And maybe the secret Democratic message is send Elon in wherever there's a contest. But and while everybody else follows the votes in Dane and Milwaukee and the Republican Milwaukee suburbs, I, following the advice of the great Ben Wickler, the best party chair in the country, look at smaller Sauk County, a middle American bellwether. Sauk went by 2 points for Trump. She carried it by 14 points, James. It was a banner day for Democrats, and Lord knows they needed it.
Well, Sauk County is legendary in my world because Diane Friday, Paul Begala's wife, parents were from Sauk County. That's where Diane came from, Sauk County, Wisconsin. So we're very familiar with Sauk being the big bellwether. A couple of things. There's 400,000 more voted in 2025 than voted in 2023. I just got a thing that Ben Wickler put out. Every county improved its share over 2024. I mean, it's percent. Every county went up in percent in Wisconsin over the 2024 baseline. So this is something I think is really, really important. So Trump comes into office, and he's strong, he's active. The Democrats are disorganized. They're in disarray. It's the lowest rating any political party has ever had. But what happened during this whole 70-day period, Trump established himself in the minds of voters that he was doing things. He was strong. He was dominating the news cycle. And all of that turned out to actually be a good thing, because when Biden was president, I'm not endorsing or saying this is right or wrong. The view of people was he was old and weak. So if something went right, they wouldn't give him credit for it, like they would anything else. Or if it went wrong, they didn't think he was strong enough to cause something wrong. Trump came in and so quickly established an ethos of strength and domination that in the end, he started owning everything. So now he owns the stock market. Now he owns the inflation rate. He totally owns the economy, because if he goes back and says it was Biden, people will say, no, I couldn't have done anything. You were the guy that came in and did everything. And I think that the combination of I think Senator Booker, what I would give him the most credit for, and I'm almost sure that they did this, how they did that longest speech and let it bleed right into election night. So you're, not watching the whole speech, but you're seeing that, you're watching the news, and he's going for the Son Thurmond record. And then at the time he finishes, the results start coming in. And so you had in all of this happened against, in the minds of people, maybe the strongest, most dominant president we've had for the first 70 days ever. And it actually worked to our benefit. His strength, or his perceived strength, is crazy, but his sense that he was in charge, he was changing everything, that it caused him to own it all in the public mind, which is sometimes not a bad thing to happen.
No, it's not. And I know Republicans are going to say, well, hey, you won a big Supreme Court race in 2023, and guess what? Trump carried Wisconsin. True, the next year. But this one, people knew the stakes. He was, he certainly endorsed this, what's his name, Schmiel, whatever have you. He kind of looked like it sounded. And Elon was all over the place with money and presence. Some Democrats said, I wish Elon was there every day. So everybody knew the stakes. This wasn't, there were no people who were voting, no hidden votes. And it was a rejection. It was a clear rejection from a swing state. And as you noted, I think there may have been as many as 500,000 more votes this time. And that's a big turnout. That's people on early April 1st deciding, hey, I'm going to go out and vote. And I don't know. I've been to Wisconsin in early April. Some places out there, James, it's cold. And so I think it was a really I think the victory was impressive. The message was impressive. The turnout was impressive.
See, the other thing is, okay, let's go back to the 2023 comparison. They were all in. Okay, we've been talking about Wisconsin since January the 20th. That's the first day coming up on the calendar. The political insiders knew about it. And Trump, he did video town halls or whatever they call it. He went in there. Musk was there every day. They spent tens of millions of dollars. So did the Democrats. Everybody agreed, hey, this is the battle. We're going to fight it out right here on this turf. And they made it into, it wasn't like a sleepy state Supreme Court race that people don't overly pay attention to. This became a race with national implications because they did it. They brought the attention to it. It's not the same race as if Musk doesn't go in there and spend $25 million and look like a freaking idiot with the cheese head hat. But a lot of this, we got a lot of help from them. A lot of help.
For sure. There's a Politico story just out that Trump is telling his inner circle that Musk will leave soon. There is guess what? We talked about victory having 1,000 fathers. Defeat is an orphan. Bye-bye, Eli. I mean, the one thing Donald Trump will not do is say it was a rejection of me. So,
no.
James, I would tell you, I never got engaged with the Florida special elections. I thought that Democrats spent a bunch of money. It was a wasted, I don't know, maybe fine to do, but there was no, those were plus 20 to 30 Republican districts, and they won by less than Trump did. I don't think that means anything either. I am interested in the fact that they pulled Elise Stefanik from the UN and kept her in Congress because they were worried, I guess, about that seat. Now, I don't know where the Bush-Paul Ryan, I have a special thing for Elise Stefanik. I don't know where the Bush-Paul Ryan young acolyte turned Trump, Jim Jordan, MAGA hater. I don't know where she does more harm. Would it have been at the UN or back in Congress? She immediately assailed the acting president of Colombia for saying that the 2023 hearing she held was kind of a comical show. It was. The presidents of Penn and Harvard and MIT got trapped. They had bad advice. But Elise Stefanik isn't interested in anti-Semitism. She's interested in scoring political points and spewing hate. And I guess, I don't know, maybe she's safer in Washington than up at the UN, James.
Well, interesting thing is that the people at the Paul Weiss and all of the capitulators, they're not looking too good today.
Oh, my God.
And you know how bad history is going to treat these people? Do they have any idea?
Go slow, because that's my outrage.
I'm not don't worry.
But you're absolutely right.
I mean, they made a bad choice. That's all. And I can't wait for you outrage, and I think you own this, and you're justifiably angry about it as you should be. But there was one huge story, and that is this Jonathan Allen and Southern Woman that wrote this book on the 2024 campaign reported that President Obama, when Biden dropped out, wanted to have a contested primary. Of course he did, because he knew it was at stake. And he could put a call in to Congressman Clyburn, who figured out what he was calling about. So he hurried up and he endorsed Harris to say he couldn't do it. And a lot of people, bragged that they shut down any talk of a contested primary right away. They got Biden to go along with it. And of course, now we know that the Biden people told Harris that she could not differ for him, have policy differentials with him. And I'm just saying the Democrats of the United States were not served well by this process. They stopped, they stayed there until right to the very end. Then they wired it up where you couldn't have any contested convention, you couldn't do anything. And then they wired it up where the candidate could not break with the president, who would be in a 70% wrong track country. The more that we find out about this disaster of 2024, the more we're going to come to the reality that it was a self-engineered defeat. It did not have to happen, not at all. In any kind of an open process, I'm very confident would have way more than 50% chance would have led to victory for the Democrats.
James,
and we just didn't give them anything they wanted.
I think you're absolutely right. And it's true, as you have noted, she was the fifth-team quarterback. She wouldn't break with Biden. It wasn't that she couldn't. He said don't. She should have. If she wanted to have any chance of winning, and she wasn't the best candidate, I will always believe if that convention in Chicago, if she had said, I am very proud to have served under Joe Biden, we did a lot of good things, and then list all the good things we did, but we had one failing, and that was inflation. We have to do better, and here's my plan, and here's how I will differ. Biden would have been upset. Some of his people would have been upset. I think it would have opened the way for her at least to be more competitive. But she couldn't do it. She wouldn't do it.
Okay, we don't, because this is one of these alternative history things.
Yeah.
But we do know that he was late, and he obviously had to get out. There wasn't any question about that. We do know that they intentionally shut off any possibility of a contested primary. We do know that she hired his entire campaign staff, who were told by Biden that she shouldn't break. I mean, we know all that happened, and all that is self-engineered. All right. At some point, somebody could have stepped in and said, "Wait a minute." And by the time the debate was June the 27th. The exit was July the 21st. I mean, and then everybody saw that, and everybody wrote letters, and then sent Schumer, uh, Speaker Murtaugh, whatever. Uh, Pelosi went over to see him. God, man, it's such a disaster we're in, and it didn't have to happen. That's all. That's what really bothers me.
And
I'll get over it.
the human tragedy is that Joe Biden could have gone down as a good man, a good president, a good leader, and been welcome in all parts of the country and the world. And instead, now he's, has anyone seen Joe Biden lately? And nor does anyone really want to. It's just, it was self-inflicted by the Democrats, but it was self-inflicted by Biden.
Well, man, but Biden was the Democrats at the time.
Exactly.
And Harris. And,
right.
You had all these people yapping around. You can't have this. It's going to be if you don't give it to her right away. And she had to take the same staff, the same strategy, the same everything. I mean, he got out, but he really didn't get out. In one sense, he stayed on the ballot.
No, she was him.
Get your nutrition right with Fay Nutrition. Well, at any age, and you kind of read this stuff, you don't know much about it, and to actually go to a dietitian, it takes some time. You got to make an appointment. You got to go there, and the fact that you can get this kind of a professional counseling is remarkable at the price that this is being offered. And you'd have to be really. You're not a very smart person if you wouldn't take advantage of something like this. And they know everything in every food. They know not just what's good for you or bad for you, but how much you should eat, your cycles and everything. And they're certified. They study this. They do it. Why not avail yourself to this advice? Because this is a really simple thing. I don't want to go to the dietitians. 2 miles away and sit in the waiting room. You don't have to do any of that.
Well, now is the perfect time to upgrade relationships with food, which is why we're partnering with Fay Nutrition. Now think about it. What are you doing to improve your dietary habits? Fay can help you find the answer. It's a revolutionary platform that connects you with your own personal registered dietitian, making expert nutrition guidance accessible and affordable. So whether you're looking for help, losing weight, improving your general health, or managing a health condition, Fay has a dietitian right for you. The best part is that all dietitians on Fay accept insurance, with over 700 plus insurance plans accepted. So you'll likely pay $0 out of pocket. Now, I know for a fact they all will find any excuse to avoid spending money, even when it's for a great cause like getting healthier. But when we found out that insurance can help you get dietary guidance, none of us have an excuse. We're tired of the one-size-fits-all diet plans and basic nutritional advice. But the dietitians on Fay work with you one-on-one to create a customized program tailored specifically to your needs. It's much more than just a diet plan. Their dietitians focus on clinically proven methods to improve your relationships with food and instill positive long-term habits. We're proud to have them as a sponsor because we've heard about so many people using Fay to transform their health and quality of life. Most importantly, it works. 93% of Fay clients report an improved relationship with food. Did you hear that? 93%. And 85% reach their target weight. A third-party study showed that clients lost 2.9 times more weight working with a dietitian through Fay compared to comparable weight loss programs. Now, don't wait. Achieve lasting results with the help of a registered dietitian through Fay. Listeners at Politics War Room can qualify to see a registered dietitian for as little as $0. That's $0 by visiting faynutrition.com/war room. That's Fay, F-A-Y, nutrition.com/war room. One last time, that's faynutrition.com/war room, and make sure you use our URL so they know we sent you. The link is in our show notes. Hey, James, our guest is Michigan State Senator and just announced United States Senate candidate for next year, Mallory McMorrow. Senator McMorrow, President Kennedy noted that victory has 1,000 fathers, and we both claim Mallory parentage. James says he was the first person to spot that great, famous speech you gave in 2022, taking on the right. And I brought you to Washington, where you dazzled those elite gridiron dinners. So we're both claiming. I would expect, like President Kennedy said, there's a couple thousand more too. But you
should take all the credit.
You have a new book entitled "Hate Won't Win." I cannot tell you how much I hope you're right. But looking at today's landscape, law firms and universities capitulating, the Trump administration ruthlessly deporting people, ignoring the law, no due process, rummaging through personal files, the Justice Department and Defense Secretary who traffic in hate. I mean, I could go on and on, as you know. I just don't see what grounds there is for optimism right now.
I can tell you where there's grounds. We are seeing here in Michigan on the ground when I do town halls and coffee hours that, before the election might get 5-10 people coming out. We have hundreds of people coming out to all of these events at every level. And what is unique about this moment is they're not just demanding to know what I'm going to do about it. They want to know what they can do. They want to know, how do I contact my federal elected officials? Do I write them a letter? Does protest work? How should I push back? And we've seen the first example of this with the federal funding freeze, when people showed up to Head Start programs to drop their kids off and the doors were closed. People raised their voices and they sounded the alarm. And within 48 hours, the Trump administration rescinded that order. So that, to me, was a sign of hope. We have a lot more power than Donald Trump wants us to believe that we have. And people are showing up in droves to learn how to use that power.
Yeah, I agree with you, and that is encouraging. But you see big law firms, Paul Weiss, Skadden Arps, Wilkie today, caving in to frivolous charges. These are not firms that did anything. This wasn't corrupt practices or anything like that. Trump didn't like some of the lawyers in their firm. I mean, that's what authoritarian states do. And same thing with Columbia and Harvard. They're getting away with it, Senator.
In some respects, yes, but look at Wisconsin yesterday. Elon Musk poured $25 million of his own money into a state Supreme Court race, and the people of Wisconsin said, hell no, you're not going to buy our votes. You're not going to buy this election. And they showed up and they won. So I think we're going to see some people try to figure out how to navigate this moment. Donald Trump is a bully. He is an attack dog. But people, regular, everyday people, not business owners, are showing up and they are saying, you do not have power over me.
You've called for Democrats to fight more. What did you think of Cory Booker this week?
It was incredible. I thought it was so inspiring. And I was getting texts all day long from people here in Michigan who were tuning in throughout the day. And I loved a few things about what he did. He put out a video explaining why he was doing this. He said that he knows that Democrats have limited procedural powers in this moment, that we don't have control of the Senate, we don't have control of the Congress, but he heard from his constituents that they wanted him to do more. So in his video, he said, I hope that me raising my voice inspires you to raise yours. And that was what I felt all day. He wasn't just up there grandstanding and doing a performance or wasting time. He was talking about Strom Thurmond and why he was up there and what it meant for him and his family and the fact that he's in the Senate. He was also reading constituent emails and stories, people talking about what it means to them to lose Medicare and Medicaid and school funding in a way that gave voice to the voiceless. And it was just so moving. And it felt like a turning point in this Trump 2.0 that we're all in.
Well, I think you may be right. It was incredibly inspiring. I was skeptical to begin with, and boy, was I wrong, because he was good. 25 hours, first of all, is extraordinary. But secondly,
incredible.
He didn't just drag on. I mean, even at the end, citing John Lewis, he was going strong. You mentioned the great win in Wisconsin. That was really a big deal because Musk put everything he can into it. into a Trump. And Susan Crawford won. She won big. She didn't win by 4 or 5 points. She won by 10 points. But the Democratic brand still is in trouble, as you have noted. So I guess the question is, what should be the priority right now? Trying to fix this brand or really fight this existential threat of Trump's evil?
Why do you have to choose either or? I think that's a false choice. So here's what I know. When you're in a race, if you're running, you never put your hands up before the finish line. We've all seen that, mistake in the Olympics where you've got an athlete who's celebrating too early. The Democrats cannot rest on our laurels waiting for Donald Trump and the Republican Party to trip over themselves and hoping that that's going to be enough. One of the reasons that I filed and announced this morning for a run for the US Senate is to show from a state like Michigan, we are going to lay out a very clear vision for what the Democratic Party and what I am for, which is a new American dream that is a direct counter to Make America Great Again, that is going to be about success, safety, and sanity. That if you work hard enough, you should be able to afford to buy the house that you dreamed of in the community that you wanted. You're going to have a safe community, great schools, and that you can afford to go on vacation, go up north in the summer. Democrats have for far too long put out messaging that sounds like Democrats are fighting for you to put food on the table. Now, that's not untrue, but that is the bare minimum. Nobody aspires to just get by. And we've left the door wide open where working class voters in Michigan might not like Donald Trump. They might think he's disgusting and repulsive, but I think they look at him and Elon Musk and they say, but those guys are successful and I want to be successful. And it's on us to reclaim the new American dream. Donald Trump lied to people about lowering their costs. He's not doing any of that right now. Look at the tariffs that are about to hit everybody. This is a moment for us, but we cannot just point at Donald Trump and say he's bad. We have to lay out a very clear alternative vision, and we're going to do that right here in Michigan.
Oh, thank you, Senator. We're going to start. In politics, timing is more important than almost anything else. And multiplication is the preferred way that you total things up. So I think that Senator Booker's speech and Wisconsin in tandem made it a much bigger deal. If he would have given that speech a week ago, it would not have near the same impact. That when he stopped speaking, they started counting. And I'm almost positive, I talked to him, but that he kind of figured we were going to win. So he starts 24 hours before the election returns start coming in. So you just bleed right into it. The message here, timing is everything.
That's right.
Everything. So you're running for the Senate in the Democratic primary, just in the interest of full disclosure. I've already endorsed you. I've signed the appeal for you. But tell our viewers why you and not some other Democrat. What are you going to bring to the table in the general election that you think that your potential opponents might not be able to bring?
So timing is everything. We are building on the momentum. Momentum is what shapes and changes not only elections, but public perception. You always want to root for a team that's the underdog that's coming back and shows momentum. We're in the middle of March Madness right now. I think we're all rooting for the underdog and for somebody to come back.
There's none left, but go ahead.
There's none left. Well, yeah, that's true. All the number ones made it through.
I'm sorry, Senator. My wife went to Duke.
But this is the opportunity in the moment for new leadership in the Democratic Party and new leadership in politics. I got into office in 2018, flipping a district against a Republican that nobody thought we could beat. And that gave us the freedom to run the campaign we wanted to run. My message in 2018, when I talked to voters in Oakland County, they said, you remind me a lot of my daughter who left and went to Chicago or Denver or Washington, D.C. Why are you in Michigan? And what can we do to bring my kids back? That is a unifying message that cuts across party line, cuts across age. And as a part of the first major generation that is due to do worse than our parents, I graduated right into the recession. I had tens of thousands of dollars of student loan debt. I did not have health care because the Affordable Care Act did not exist yet. I slept a few nights in the back of my car. And I know way too many people now who have given up hope that the American dream is possible for them. That people I say who say, I did everything right. I worked hard. I went to school. I went into the trades. I went to college. I still can't afford to buy a house. I still can't afford to start a family. And that is a unique voice that I bring. Also, somebody who has a track record of cutting through bullshit. People are tired of it. They just want to hear you out there talking about what you're going to do with them and for them. And that's what we need in this moment.
Yeah, of all the things that impress me, the thing that impresses me the most is you actually beat a Republican in what was a Republican district. I get so up to, I don't know what, that people come from plus 25 partisan lean Democratic districts, and they are kind of more responsible for the message of the party. And I think it's the people in places that you ran or districts like that that have to just can't win by just being the best Democrat in the room, but you got to be the best candidate.
Yeah.
I think that's critical, and I'm glad to hear that. So we have a Democratic senator in Senator Slotkin, who's a guest on this show, and Senator Peters is retiring. So this is open. When is your primary?
It is August. So we have a marathon and then a sprint. We've got a late primary here in Michigan. So we've got a long campaign, and then we turn around very quickly to run against the Republican.
So that means whoever we nominate has got to be ready to go that night.
Exactly.
They don't have time to get it. They don't have time to get it together, right? So, what's your kind of aspiration for the kind of dollars you'd like to raise for the primary?
So we're going to have to raise a ton of money. This is likely going to be the most competitive race in the entire country. Senator Slotkin raised nearly $50 million last cycle to defeat Mike Rogers, and she did so very narrowly. So that's the window that we're looking in. We're up today. Listeners can go to McMorrowforMichigan.com. We have seen huge support already this morning. Last I checked, we had more than 1,600 individual donors, and we posted just at 6 a.m. It's 11 o'clock in the morning by the time we're recording this. The energy is there. But that's what we're looking at. This is going to be an incredibly expensive race, and we need everybody on board with us.
And is Mike Rogers the likely Republican nominee in 2026?
He has indicated he's going to be running again, but so has Tudor Dixon, who ran against Governor Gretchen Whitmer in the race last cycle. So it's going to be hotly contested on the Republican side as well.
Right, but Rogers almost beats him to slot. I mean, it was close.
It was close. It was very, very close.
Very important. Okay, Albert, go ahead.
You know what? I think you articulated quite well what Democrats have to stand for in a generic sense. But what particular issues are you going to talk about that you think give you an advantage over Mike Rogers or over anyone else?
So housing, number one, and particularly for Mike Rogers, I don't even think he finished building his house in Michigan when he was running for Senate last time. He was still living in Florida. So we're going to be talking about housing. We have done great work in Michigan on not only funding affordable housing, but passing budgets where we have a $50 million annual housing fund for the first time in state history, and our state department has built over 10,000 new housing units since we did that. I'm also going to be talking about childcare. We have made strides towards universal pre-K, expanding childcare. I would be one of the only young parents in the Senate, and that's critical. You know, working moms do not feel like they're supported. Working dads do not feel like they're supported. Also, issues that are really important to me and of signature to my work, gun violence prevention. I passed Michigan's red flag law. It was my first bill ever signed into law. And over its first year in effect, it's been used more than 300 times, and it has saved lives in instances of domestic violence and abuse, instances of even our police officers who have been suffering from mental health crises and are contemplating suicide. People want to know that they are safe in their communities. And that's just a few of the things that we're going to be focused on.
When we first had you on, abortion was a very, very hot issue. It seems to have declined as an issue. Is that a fair assessment, and why?
In a place like Michigan, it is an important issue, but it's also a very different time. I am very responsive to the needs of my constituents and the issues of the moment. From when I first took office, I introduced the first version of the Reproductive Health Act legislation, which would have codified Roe into state law. The Republicans refused to take that legislation up. Then Michigan voters put a ballot proposal on our ballot, and now abortion access and reproductive rights are guaranteed in our state constitution. So it is an important issue. And I know that Michigan voters say, we did that. We protected that right. What are you going to do next? That's why it's a priority for me to talk not only about abortion and reproductive rights, but in supporting families in whole, so that you decide when it's right for you to start a family and get pregnant, and you know you're going to have safe access to childbirth. You're going to be able to afford to deliver that baby. You're going to have childcare. You're going to have great schools, and it's about kind of this holistic approach to supporting moms and families.
Senator, I brought that up because I am totally convinced, based on some reporting, that at some point this administration is going to crack down on Medicaid abortion. They're going to use the FDA. Bobby Kennedy will go along with it, and they're going to make it much harder to get the abortion pill. Will that resurrect this as a frontline issue?
It may. I think that one of the things that we learned through the Dobbs decision is that, fortunately or unfortunately, it's really hard to imagine a reality until it happens. But what I know in Michigan is that if that happens, if the administration weaponizes Medicaid to attack abortion access and reproductive rights, we're ready to respond. We have had that legislation in the state legislature that we can put forward. I've also introduced legislation to protect women's reproductive health data. The number of women who use period tracker apps or smartwatches to track their periods, to work with their doctors to help them get pregnant. That's also something that in Project 2025, they said that they will weaponize in order that that data be shared with the federal government to allow them to crack down on women who have had miscarriages, which is horrifying. So we're laying the groundwork here in Michigan, and that's something I'm going to be talking about on my campaign, that we need Democrats who anticipate what's coming and are prepared to react. Because, I don't know about you guys, but I feel voters' frustrations who tell me things like, when Democrats had full power in the federal government, why didn't they actually protect Roe? Why didn't they use what they said they were going to do instead of just using it to fundraise out of fear? And that's a very different message that I'm going to bring forward, that when we get power in Michigan, we use it and we protect people.
One final question, and turn to James, and this is backward looking, I grant you. You called Joe Biden in early July, contacted him early July of 2024 to say, hey, you ought to get out. You can't win. Do you and others, you were there when a lot of others weren't, but do you and others wish you would have been there a year earlier and just said, hey, don't do it? This is a guy who can't win. He shouldn't run. He's too damn old.
I don't know. I really don't. I had a hard time deciding when to write that letter because of the amount of respect I have and still have for Joe Biden and his lifetime of service. But I think all of us watched the debate. And then I wrote that letter shortly after his interview with George Stephanopoulos, where it just seemed like a completely different man. And I don't know if that was the case a year earlier. But I do know that as a party, we have to listen to people when they tell us what they're feeling. So, that's why I'm really, really proud of a state like Michigan, where we now have 2 cycles in a row where between Senator Stabenow and Senator Peters, both of them recognize that part of leadership is understanding when it's time for succession planning and to bring up the next generation of leaders. And I hope that changes things. And we're leading on that from Michigan.
So, what Rogers is going to try to do is say, well, that's already in the Michigan Constitution, so that's not an issue anymore. Make him say he will never try to repeal that. But that will, and that will really suppress his vote with these pro-life people. They're not going to like that.
Yeah, 100%.
Okay.
Yeah.
So you say it's in there, but if you and your party get power again, would you pledge to never touch this provision of our Constitution? Make him answer, because he wants it to go away. Look, that doesn't matter in Michigan anymore. It's already done. We can move on to other things. That's number one thing that you're going to see. Number two, the frame that overall frame, it fits perfectly in what you're saying is, I want to be the center people are trying to make it. Elon Musk has already got a president. Let's get the pipe fitter, somebody on their side, or let's get the retiree, or let's get the student at Eastern Michigan, or wherever it is that you want. But the framework is you want to help people who are trying to make it.
That's right. That's right. We should get back to a place where if you do everything right and you work hard, you should be able to have an American dream. And we have to point out very aggressively that Donald Trump lied to you. He said he was going to come into office and lower your costs. And I've got, residents here in Michigan who say, why the heck are we in a trade war with Canada? That's our neighbor. It's basically like visiting the city next door. We cross the bridge multiple times a day. I can't understand it. This is not what I voted for. So we got to point out they are stealing your tax dollars, stealing your Medicaid, Medicare, school aid funding, and we have the alternative to support you.
So we're going to talk about this later on the show. I know you're busy, but I want to say this. After having known you, but particularly listening to you today, I couldn't be happier that I endorsed you in this primary, because the things that you were saying are the things that I think are so necessary for Democrats around the country to say. I think you have a really, really good grip on what people want, and putting food on the table. That's not aspirational. That's the minimum. Okay, if we're going to take credit for that, we can take credit for anything. But I like the framework. I love your work ethic. I think you'd be a tremendous United States Senator, and I'm glad to come out for you, Senator McMorrow.
I appreciate that. That means so much.
Okay, thank you, ma'am.
Mallory McMorrow, everybody out there, a star of not a star of the future. That's wrong. A star now, and to be even a greater star in the future. Senator, thank you so much for joining us.
Thanks, Al. Thanks, James.
Bring education to where your kid is without school. This is the thing about education. It's like if you don't do it, somebody else is going to do it. And if you can, and you can able to afford this, and it's very, very reasonable, you're going to be stunned by this. Why not give your kid every advantage that they have compared to what other kids have? Because people are more fluent. You're hiring private tutors. They're doing all this. This gives your child the same break as anybody else at a really affordable and easy thing to do. Why would you want to give your child, the chance to realize their full potential?
OutSchool is an online learning platform that empowers kids ages 3 to 18 to learn on their own terms with the widest variety of teachers, topics, and classes to suit any interest. They offer fun, social, and interactive small group video classes that can be taken anytime with one-on-one tutoring and clubs that connect learners around their favorite topics. Since 2015, we partner with vetted, diverse expert teachers to give kids everywhere greater access to high-quality education. OutSchool's mission is to inspire kids to love learning by making education fun, social, and self-directed. As a father and grandfather, I can speak confidently when I say that traditional educational options don't always work for everyone. Finding the direct connection between your child's needs and an effective program is invaluable. From what I've been told, the math support is truly excellent, especially if your family members skip calculus to go to their political science classes, like I did, or ditch them to interview subjects for a fresh piece. So, if you're like us and believe that families should be empowered by the educational process, you need to try OutSchool. It's affordable, it's flexible, and you can feel confident that your child is learning at a pace that is right for them. Don't wait. Now is the time to help your kids cultivate the lifelong learning habits that will prepare them for the future. So if you want to try OutSchool, you can now get up to $20 off your child's first class or tutoring session for a limited time. This exclusive discount is only available when you go to outschool.com and use the code War Room at checkout. That's outschool.com and use the code War Room for up to $20 off your child's first class or tutoring session on OutSchool. OutSchool. Take charge of their future. The link is in the show notes. Now for the outrage of the week. Big, rich, supposedly prestigious law firms, Paul Wise, Skadden Arps, Willkie Farr, capitulated to the Trump White House and changed their hiring practices, and they're going to offer pro bono to some of Trump's causes. Why were they shaken down? What did they do? Well, Trump didn't like some of the lawyers they had in their firm. This is America. Trump didn't like some of the lawyers that they had in their firm. They didn't engage in corrupt foreign practices or anything like that. But Trump shook them down and they caved. And I'll tell you something. Those senior partners, they're going to get richer. They're still going to be on university boards and library boards and museum boards and all that, and they belong to the country club. But at some stage, their grandchild or their great-grandchild is going to ask, what did you do? What did you do during that time? And the answer is going to be they were cowards, total cowards, in contrast to a few others like Wilmer Hale and Perkins Coie who are fighting. This really, James, is pathetic in America.
I actually think it's not even a good business decision because, when you hire a firm like that, I mean, you supposedly you're getting the best, you're certainly paying for it like you're getting the best. And if they're not willing to stand up for themselves and other people in the law firm, how are they going to stand up for you? I mean, in addition to it being a cowardly thing that they've tarnished not just their reputation, but the reputation of people who came before them and the reputation of people that are going to come after them. But again, if I had a choice between, Wilmer Hale or Perkins Coie on the law firm of Williams and Connolly, who's representing Perkins Coie, by the way, but it doesn't matter. I would certainly rather have a lawyer willing to stand up for his brothers and sisters in the law firm. How are they going to stand up for a client that you just have a financial relationship with them? I think it's a dumb, short term. I think the people that were behind this are going to live and die in shame.
Well, their legacy certainly is stained. And I would add, when we talk about Wilmer Hale, they hired Paul Clement, the most respected conservative lawyer, to represent him. And people say Paul Clement and Seth Waxman, God, they argued against each other all the time before the Supreme Court. But you know something they share in common, James? They believe in the Constitution. That really is kind of odd, isn't it? So I agree with you. Williams Connolly, Perkins Coie, a couple others, Wilmer Hale, Paul Clement, they'll be able to tell their grandchildren and great-grandchildren, we stood up when it counted.
Yeah, I actually think it over a period of time, was even benefited business. I think it was also a terrible financial decision that they made, in addition to just the gruesome reputation one.
You want to add to the outrage, or just stick with that?
I mean, I'll stick with that. I just to make a point we talked about earlier, but can't talk about it. What we saw in Wisconsin was so unbelievable, so historic. Sometimes you see history pass in front of you and you don't realize what you just saw. You saw a state Supreme Court race in a medium to maybe kind of a little more than medium-sized state, spent $100 million. All right, think about that, $100 million. Then you had the richest man in the world, by far, the richest man that ever lived. He's richer than Rockefeller was in dollars. All right, understand that. He's the richest man that ever lived. Is there going around in a cheese head and making the election about him, who's actually South Africa, originally a South African national. Everybody comes from somewhere, but it was just stunning to see that. And people would ask me about Wisconsin, and I'd say, "Do you know who the candidates are?" And they said, "Well, tell you the truth, I didn't even look. They just kind of knew it." But it was almost like the significance of the candidates, Paul, but because you were watching something that was quite remarkable that is never, ever, ever been seen in the history of American politics. That kind of money spent on that kind of race in that kind of state, and then a person like Elon Musk coming in. And I love how predictable it is that Trump says he's going to be leaving town shortly. That's so transparent. I mean, it's just, you knew this the whole time.
I'll tell you. Okay.
Yeah. But when he leaves town, the damage to weather forecasting, to the health of Americans, to Social Security, to environmental, when he leaves town, to everything, yes, child cancer. When he leaves, he's leaving a lot of stuff behind. It's all shit. It's all shit. And the damage that they have done to this country is incalculable. It just is.
You know, James, he's from South Africa. I'm actually a pro-immigration advocate. This administration wants to make an exception for any immigration crackdowns for white South Africans, But don't say they're racist. I mean, don't really. I mean, how can anyone accuse them of being racist?
Let me say what Elon Musk said, like in the last 30 days. He said Hitler was not responsible for the Holocaust. It was really government employees. In other words, the postman did it. And what cracks me up is a lot of these, I'll just say it bluntly, you see a lot of these really rich Jewish guys in like Manhattan, and they can't be Democrats because of the students at Columbia. Okay. So you can be a Republican that the most powerful person in that party exonerates Hitler? That's what happened. Okay, that is exactly what happened.
And Trump has dinner at Mar-a-Lago with an avowed Nazi?
Yes. But
that's okay. We're worried more about the kids.
But wait, I don't like the president of Colombia. I can't go along with this. All right? They literally fucking people that say that. And of course, we know what they're really saying. I'll do anything to get a tax cut. I don't care about all that history and everything. No, I want my tax cut now. I need my money. It's unbelievable.
Yeah, it really is. It really is.
Make your home start to grow with fast-growing trees. But these people have rendered one of my favorite sayings obsolete. The best time to plant an oak tree was 25 years ago. The second best time is today. Maybe you could have planted it a year ago.
Yeah.
It's amazing when you can accelerate the growth of something as great as a tree.
Yeah, it really is. Because Fast Growing Trees is the biggest online nursery in the United States with thousands of different plants and over 2 million happy customers. They have all the plants your yard needs, like fruit trees, privacy trees, flowering trees, shrubs, and so much more. Whatever plants you like, Fast Growing Trees has the perfect fit for your climate and space. Fast Growing Trees makes it easy to get your dream yard, order online, and get your plants delivered directly to your door in just a few days without ever leaving home. Not only does their Alive and Thrive guarantee ensure your plants arrive happy and healthy, Fast Growing Trees even gives you support from their trained plant experts once they arrive to make sure everything grows great. Now, no matter what your space looks like, Fast Growing Trees offers 6,000 plants to provide the perfect choice for you. They have everything from indoor plants to fruit trees, full-size privacy trees, and more. Just follow their 14-point quality checklist, and Fast Growing Trees will help you care for each plant individually based on their needs. When you have help from the pros, everything from watering routines to maintaining the correct sunlight exposure becomes easy. I've always been a creature of the city, but with Fast Growing Trees, even my wife, Judy, can have some exciting options in our place. We just learned you can grow a vanilla bean plant indoors, but with so many different options. The choice is yours. You can even talk to a plant expert about your soil type, landscape design, taking care of your plants, and everything else you need. No green thumb required. Don't wait. This spring, they have the best deals for your yard with up to half off on select plants and other deals. Listeners to our show get 15% off their first purchase when using the code WARROOM at checkout. That's an additional 15% off at fastgrowingtrees.com using the code WARROOM at checkout. Again, fastgrowingtrees.com, code WARROOM. Now's the perfect time to plant. Use War Room to save today. Offer is valid for a limited time. Terms and conditions may apply. The link is in our show notes. Here we go with the questions, James. There's so many this week. Let me start with two. I'm going to combine two. Gina in Casper, Wyoming asks, is Trump looking to spark enough protests to justify declaring martial law in 2026, thus suspending the election? And Danielle in Montreal, Canada asks, with everything going on lately, what makes you think there will be midterm elections for sure? If there are, won't they be rigged? These are serious questions. Serious people are asking, James.
And they are. I take them serious. They deserve a serious answer. And a serious answer is not necessarily an encouraging answer. I've said it before, say it again. Trump does not like the United States. He doesn't like our laws. He doesn't like our Constitution. He doesn't like our people. He calls them fat. He calls them poorly educated, slobs, stupid. And he is in the midst of what I believe, I've said, and continue to believe even strongly every day, we're in the midst of a collapse. And if you look at the markets, if you look at all across the board, the political collapse was finally, look what happened in Wisconsin, look what's going on with all of the Musk and the craziness. And what I think if he sees himself going down, he's going to try to take the whole country with him.
Absolutely.
He does not understand. He is not loyal to the United States of America. He does not like this country. He criticizes it all the time. He has affection for dictators. He has affection for authoritarianism. And you're so correct to be concerned about this, and it's getting worse by the day. It is not going to stop getting worse. And we got to be on a high alert for he's going to try anything he can, and to help himself, of course. But I believe the man genuinely, fundamentally wants to hurt the country.
Yeah, no, I think you're right. Pat in Ann Arbor, Michigan, one of my favorite towns, asked, when will the media wise up and realize that Trump's strategy is to distract us with things like his recent claim about running for a third term? I agree with you for the most part, Pat. If he thought he could get away with it, he doesn't care what the Constitution and the law says, he'd try to do it. But you know what? He's 78. He's not in very good health, really. People are going to tire of him, so I don't think there's any chance of it happening. But he loves distractions.
Understand, the most oft-repeated campaign promise of this century is Trump saying, "I will lower grocery prices from day one. I will get this economy going from day one. I can do this." So Trump, in the interim, between the time he won the election and he says, "Well, honestly, there's not much the president can do about grocery prices." All right, that's after saying it. That I'm accumulating a number of times he said it. It's a great interest to me. Then he said, "Well, I really can't do anything about it." But what he knows is that I got to create another story. If I just sit there and let the story be, I've already broken my number one campaign promise. It's going to be terrible. So he says, "Just Panama Canal." So, well, oh my God, what would happen to that? And the people understand how it was built, and the French tried it, and then they came in, and Teddy Roosevelt, and we had this, and Jimmy Carter, and then the next thing you know, he's in Greenland or something, and then we're going, and then we're all totally distracted. Then we're going to annex Canada, and then we're going to be a third term. And what he knows, if he just keeps proposing one crazy ass thing that's never going to happen, then no one is going to come back and say, wait a minute, you said this all the time. And this is the key point here. He is a great distractor, but we are great distractees.
Right.
We're talking about the Panama Canal or Greenland, and we're not talking about the fact that inflation is rising even higher than it was when he took office. It's getting worse. The market is collapsing. He hadn't done shit. And we don't do that because we have Larry Tribe is fine. I like Larry. Oh, we have, well, could he run a third term? Well, maybe he did this and ran for vice president, but would he be eligible? And
Not according to the 12th Amendment, right?
Look, man, you said you were going to get prices down. All right, you said you were going to be good for the economy. And one great question that Cory Booker asked in his speech, are you better off than you were on January 20th? Which that is what they're up to. I'll be discussing this in more detail in the forum, but that's
we look forward to that, because here's one for you from Laura in Raleigh, North Carolina, another one of my very favorite cities. I have a weakness for state capitals. Suppose, listen to this. This is good. Suppose you were president of Carville University, a private school that receives federal grants. How would you respond to Trump's attack on elite universities with a made-up reason about not managing anti-Semitism properly?
Well, you have to understand, I am almost a First Amendment absolutist. I taught higher ed for many years. And I would tell my students, the only reason that I did not have David Duke come to this class is because I am a moral coward. But I would have no philosophical reason with David Duke speaking to my students. If I wasn't a good enough teacher that he could influence them, then I'm a pretty poor teacher anyway. So I'm very personally in my own outlook. But of course, and I think the simple rule is you can have dissent, you can have different people there, but when somebody is be careful that students don't feel like they're being targeted for harm. That's quite another thing. But I'm lean. I'm not absolutist, but my presumption is people should be allowed to express themselves, just like this Palestinian at Columbia. I was talking to Jennifer Rubin, who's very, very pro-Israel perspective, thought it was an outrage. This is an outrage.
Well,
there's no due process.
And how
nothing.
about Joe Rogan being outraged at the way without any due process? The thugs sent people down to El Salvador incorrectly.
Right.
I hope it's caving in. I think you're onto something, James.
I do. And I just don't think it's going to I don't see it getting any better. And, in the Musk leaving town, I don't think that guy, he's just not going to walk up and go away. He's going to get some revenge. Something's going to happen here. I can tell you. He's got a lot. And, I do want to dwell on this. You know this as well as I do. His legislative calendar between now and September is brutal. And he can't get away from it.
Hey, James, one aside. Can my grandson Kai get into Carville University?
Oh, absolutely. If his grandpa pays full freight, we're very tuition responded university.
Shane in Minneapolis, Minnesota. Could Trump be the kind of crisis that gives enough impotence to coalesce enough Americans to break our anti-democracy malaise. It started in Wisconsin, Shane, next door to you. Build on it. It's a great start, but it's only a small start, and people have to quit bitching and quit worrying about this or that, and quit saying that so and so ought to resign, and they ought to get to work. They ought to. There are elections coming up, specials, big ones in November, and I think the tide's turning. But get with it and be smart the way Ben Wickler and the Wisconsin Democrats were.
Yes, would it be great if the next Democratic president running to say, I'm going to make an America that I grew up in, where you didn't have to worry that the democracy was going to end. That people have to get back to the country that takes that for granted. And people are justifiably mortified because he hates it. But I never thought, I thought obviously the democracy was imperfect. He started out, you could only be a properly owned white male. Then you had suffrage, and vote. You couldn't vote if you in a lot of places because of race or ethnicity. Then you couldn't vote if you didn't own property in a bond election. It changed some of that. But but I never thought we were going to move away from what Martin Luther King called the arc of history bends toward progress. And right now, it's bending the wrong way. We're not trying to make our democracy better. We're like, God damn, let's just save the thing. Shit. It's a real aspirational change in the years I've been around.
It sure is. Eric in Boston, Massachusetts, James, directs a political question to you. With the margin so narrow in both chambers, how come more is not being done to take advantage of this tipping point moment by more aggressively recruiting a handful of moderate Republicans to become independents and caucus with the Democrats as a governing majority?
Well, I don't know. It's a good point. I don't know that some of that is not going on. Jonathan Martin had an interesting story, and he said there were a couple of Republicans that were really pulling for the Democrats in Wisconsin. I suspect there were more than a couple. I bet you if there's 220 members of that Republican House caucus, I bet you 7 or 8 were happy what happened last night in Wisconsin. Okay, you've been around politics, you know human nature as well as anybody I know, and you know there are more than a just sliver of Republicans that were actually pleased that Musk did so poorly in Wisconsin, and conversely Trump. It's just one of those things. And as soon as I read that story, I knew it was true, and I said, "Shit, I could think, how many others on there?"
Yeah. Well,
and there was no Democrat that was pulling against on every
that's
Democrat.
For sure. Patrick in Eugene, Oregon says, "Are Trump's tariffs going to open inroads for Democrats with rural voters?" Listen, he's going to go through with big tariffs. They will be a disaster. My guess is at some point he'll back down, he'll shake people down, he'll make some money off them, but it'll still be a disaster. And I think it's going to hit rural areas harder. And it's very important that Democrats make that point convincingly. He is increasing your taxes. That's what a tariff is. It's a tax increase. And I think it's a potentially really winning issue for Democrats.
So this is what I think is going on in his head. He knows he has all of this stuff coming up. Now, Mike Allen, Jim Van are reporting that they're rethinking the tax cuts. But they have terrible, terrible budget numbers coming up. When they start releasing the stuff, it's going to be good. In the back of Trump's mind, and they thought they could save, hundreds of billions, $1 trillion with those. They saved shit, as we all knew was going to happen from the beginning. But all they did is destroy people's morale. That's all it was good for. In Trump's mind, he thinks that they're going to raise so much money, these tariffs, that he's going to be able to give all of his rich friends a tax break and do all the other stuff. It's insane, but that's what he thinks. That's what he really, really thinks.
It is, and not to mention, I mean, how about HHS laying off 20,000 people? I mean, Trump and Musk may be the two biggest villains, but RFK Jr. has so soiled that great family name. It's just outrageous. People are going to die because of that.
Well, isn't it? You know, somebody told me one time, you can pick your friends, you can't pick your relatives. You know, I don't blame the Kennedy thing. I'm no more responsible for him. But the guy is he's a lunatic. And you know he is.
I do. I really do. James, let's bring it home. Red in New Orleans wants your reaction to the failure of the constitutional amendment in Louisiana. And as tough as it is, what advice would you have for Louisiana Democrats trying to build on it?
Right. So, Red, thank you. And this is something that I'm going to take a minute. So Jeff Landry comes in, he's the governor, he wins overwhelmingly. It's an overwhelmingly veto-proof Louisiana legislature. And they decided going to change the state constitution. It's an elaborate thing, but forget about it. So it was a proposal, and one was to change some taxation laws, had to do with court jurisdictions. You know, it was all a disguised kind of power grab by the governor. And I had, for the most part, forgotten about it. I was overseas, and so I get up Sunday morning, and I'm looking, and it go down. It went down. 4 of them went down, all about exactly the same, 65-35. But the most fascinating thing, in a recent gubernatorial election, we had a Sean Wilson, who was a Black Democrat, who ran. The turnout in New Orleans for this constitutional referendum was 11,000 more than it was in a governor's race. Now, and it was nothing else. There wasn't something. There was no get out to vote thing. There was no radio in Orleans Parish. There were no, signs. Don't forget to vote today. None of that. Didn't have any money. Okay, they didn't. Now, it got to grassroots. NAACP was, set out some stuff, but it was not very much. And on the right, the Woody Jenkins and Tony Spell that kind of passed out in East Baton Rouge Parish, they came out against it. So that was a pretty interesting dynamic. But man, it lost almost everywhere. It lost in places that I think like most even Republican parishes, it didn't pass. It was kind of 53-47. It was amazing, and it was a very good question, Red. And I honestly don't. It means something. I maybe we'll figure out one day what it meant, but it does mean something. You have more people vote in a constitutional amendment election than you do in a gubernatorial election.
Yeah, it does. Hey, thanks for listening to Politics War Room with James Carville, and I'm Al Hunt. As always, send your questions for us by email to politicswarroom@gmail.com or tweet them for next week's show at Politicon. Following this episode, we'd really appreciate it if you'd check out the links to our sponsors, Fay Nutrition, OutSchool Inc., and Fast Growing Trees in our episode show notes. We thank you for supporting them because when you do, it helps make this podcast happen. Now, to keep up with us, subscribe to Politics War Room on Apple Podcasts, Spotify, or wherever you listen. And check out our Substack at politicswarroom.com. James and I are constantly adding new content, so go and take a look. Now, you also can find other shows you might enjoy on the Politicon YouTube channel or when you search Politicon on your favorite podcast sites. And remember, please rate the show with a 5-star review. We'll be back next week with another show as we continue our War Room plan.